Thanks for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. And today I wanted to talk to you about some experiences that I come across in my profession. And so I'm a professional coach and consultant. And a lot of times when people come to me, they're definitely feeling discouraged. They can't find their way to that next step, that next level. They need some help. They need some outside help, some objective help, some different thinking. And a lot of times they feel like, why me? How did this happen to me? I'm in a bad situation. So I wanted to talk to you today about how life really prepares you, life's disappointments, life's discouragements prepare you to be better in business, to prepare you to be better as an entrepreneur and self employed. And I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about some lessons life gives us along the way that we've all experienced has nothing to do with being in business. So we'll talk about something we've all probably experienced is when you love someone, they don't love you back. So for instance, you could imagine a teenage crush and you tell someone you love them and they don't reciprocate. Very awkward feeling, very, very disheartening. You feel vulnerable. You feel like you exposed yourself. You feel embarrassed. You feel in pain. And it can be one of those moments in life that stops you in your tracks. Now, when you translate that to business, when you love something and it doesn't love you back, that could be something like you get your first job, for instance, and you love it and it's great. But the people around you, your boss, your coworkers, it's just a job to them. And the first time you go through some office politics, the first time you go through a performance appraisal, and isn't that feel good situation, do you hang it up and quit? Or do you learn from it and you get better at it? Now, in the situation of being the teenager in love, well, having a crush and having moments of love as someone young and growing up is good. Those are good experiences. They teach you what being in love is all about. And when you find true love, you've gotten better along the way from all the failed relationships you had to that point. So when you finally get to that successful relationship, and hindsight is 2020, you can look back and you can say those failed relationships made me better, made me more ready when I got there. Same thing with jobs. People who leave a job, they're looking for that unfailed relationship. They're looking for that work environment that does fulfill emotional needs and does fulfill financial needs. Sometimes it's just one or the other. You have a lot of folks nowadays talking about pursuing their passions, and I think people mistake that for I chuck it all and I go travel Europe and I hike through the mountains, and that's not always the case. Have passion at the heart of what you do and the heart of what you're in search of, but don't give everything up, randomly just because you think, well, I'm just not in love with the situation. So you can learn from that rejection in that relationship, and you can apply it later in life to business situations as well. Think about the first time that maybe you tried out for a team, you didn't make the team, or you were on the team and you got cut, and none of us are really ready for that. And it's hard when you see your friends make the team and you don't make the team. Now, what can you learn from that as someone, again, we're talking about maybe in high school, maybe in college, maybe middle school, and you try out for a team and you don't make it. Well, you learn that not everybody makes a team, that there are levels of ability, and that maybe this particular calling, this particular sport or activity isn't for you. And some of the best success stories I had came out of coaching girls basketball, and a girl didn't make the team. She was good, she wasn't great. None of the girls were great, but she just didn't make the team. And she went on to explore her opportunities in volleyball instead of basketball, even though all of her friends were on the basketball team. Well, she maintained her friendships on the basketball team. She made new friendships on the volleyball team, and she actually ended up getting a scholarship to college in volleyball. She was much happier. One door closes, another door opens up. Same thing applies in business. So these lessons in life along the way are great lessons. If you're not experiencing failing along the way and struggle along the way, you're really missing something in life. And when it really counts, you're not going to have those lessons to lean on when it really counts in the future. Think about the first time you lost someone you love, and it could be a parent, it could be a spouse, it could be a child, but you've lost someone that you love, and it's devastating, and it rocks your world. And at the time, it makes no sense, and sometimes it never makes sense. We always think they've gone too soon or they suffered too much. But there are lessons that come out of that. There are lessons. Sometimes you see someone having strong faith, even though they're suffering, and you wonder how could they have that kind of faith. It might be a lesson that you learn. It might be something you learn about yourself. You learn about forgiveness. You learn about compassion. You learn that life goes on whether you wanted to or not. And maybe you learn about somebody's good qualities that maybe you have and you've let them sleep for a while and you need to reawaken those. So even when you lose someone you love, as painful as that is, there can be learning that comes from it. The first time you've ever had to face mental illness, either in yourself or in those around you that you love, it's devastating. Mental illness is still something that is not understood as deeply as it could be. And it's not an illness you can see. It's not like you have a bruise on your face or a broken bone or a gashed wound. It's something on the inside. And it's something you can't necessarily see the symptoms of, and it can be hidden very well. It can be medicated. But it's something that you can learn from, that what you thought was important before that moment becomes unimportant. And you start to maybe take inventory of what's really important in life and what's really important around you, and that these things do exist, and that medication isn't always the answer. It can help, but true support, true friendship, truth in general helps, and being honest with what's going on. And it's not something that maybe could even be cured, but it's something that could be faced together and talked about. And many times that's the biggest help of all, is talking about something that is something you don't understand. And those are maybe some painful lessons that you can translate into business, because a lot of times what happens in business doesn't make sense from an emotional standpoint. It doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint. There's office politics. There's all sorts of things that happen, and your lessons in life leading up to that should help you get through those moments where you can look at your job as something that it does fulfill the financial need, and maybe everything else fulfills those passions and those emotional needs. And if you can marry the two, if you find a job that does fulfill both, that's fantastic. And that's what I think is important when folks talk about pursuing their passions. It doesn't mean that you give up everything and you just simply go wild and forget your responsibilities. It does mean that you have passion with both eyes wide open, and that you look for ways to be passionate about what you do for a living and provide something that is sustainable in a global sense. And I think that's really at the heart of pursuing your passions. Now, life also gives you some really positive lessons that you can learn from and you can apply in business too. So let's think about this. The first time you had to make a friend. Now, this doesn't have to be a childhood experience. It could be that you moved to a new neighborhood and you had to start over. But think about when you make a friend. You have to start in a very awkward situation where all you know is that there's a person across the room or down the hall or across the street or in the neighborhood, and you have to talk with them, and you have to truly actively listen. What's going on in their life? What is it they like to do when they're not here at this particular school event or this particular work function? You had to make a friend. You had to listen to them, and sometimes you had to do something nice for them before anything nice came back your way. But think about the positive things you learned from that applies to business. When you have to interact with somebody who you don't know them, you know their name, you know their title, you have a business meeting with them for the first time, and you remember the importance of active listening and paying attention to what makes that person tick. Because you know what? At the end of the day, they hang up that job and they go back home or they go back to their personal life. And it's important to know the person behind the transaction. So remember the lessons you learned from what it took to make a friend. Because you could have easily chosen not to go make that friend and you'd end up alone. Think about the very first time you helped someone in need. This doesn't have to be that you wrote a check to a charitable organization. I'm talking about when you see a person who needs the door held open for them, needs you to carry the groceries across the street for them, They're struggling with their child who's having a temper tantrum in the store and things are falling out of their grocery cart, and you stop and you help them for that moment. You've engaged with them at one of the worst moments in their life, and you've helped them and you've calmed the situation and you've learned the power of giving, how good it makes you feel. It could be someone you know who needs really big help. Maybe they do need you to write them a check. Maybe they do need you to come pick them up from a troublesome situation. But you know that song, you find out who your friends are. When the going gets tough and someone calls on you and you go there for them with no strings attached, there's a tremendous benefit you get back in terms of the positive energy it creates around you, how good you feel about helping somebody else, and how much it would help that person at that point get better in a bad situation. Now that translates to business very, very well because you're always looking to help someone in a situation get better. And the result of that is that they're working with your company because you have solutions you provide. And I'm a big preacher of find problems and provide solutions. Solve the problem, earn the trust, earn the business, and continue a great relationship because we're all in the people business. Being in the people business means you have to find ways to help those that don't even realize they need help themselves. So there's benefits to that. The other very powerful lesson that life gives you is the power of forgiveness. And I always say forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. I'm not good at forgiving, and I can hold on to grudges and I can hold on to things for a long time. But I'm learning, and what you learn sometimes is you can forgive the act, not always the person, not always the personal nature of what happened to you. It depends on the depth of it. But when you truly can get to a point where you can forgive what's happened, the act, you find relief in yourself. You open up to a whole new world of understanding. You may never forget that that person did that, but the pain of that thing they did to you that you had to forgive goes away. And when pain goes away, positive comes in. And when positive fills you up, negative goes away. You become a better person for yourself. So sometimes forgiveness is the gift you have to give yourself. Others may need to be forgiven. Others may say they're sorry. Others may be very sorry for what they've done. But when you truly can get past that pain and you can let go, that's really what forgiveness is. It doesn't mean you let go of the memory of what happened, the lesson you learned from that painful thing they did to you, but the pain itself does not drive your motivation. And the other lesson then that you get that's a positive is when you make it past the pain of all these things we discussed, when you get to actually look back with hindsight and see the positive, see the better person you've become, and you get to actually see that, yes, it does make sense to hang in there, to get past that point. And that this whole thing applies to business. And in today's world, we talk about starting small businesses, pursuing your passion, trying to climb the ladder, trying to leave one employer and find another employer. All these things you've been prepared for your whole life. Now, the difference is this. You have to realize you've been prepared by life for all the rejection and the bitterness and the struggles that come along with a job. But you also have to remember this. You have a choice along the way. Your choice is to be defined by the discouragement, by the setbacks, by all the things that happen. They're not failures. There's a saying, you fail your way to success. I think what happens is you climb your way over discouragement to success. So you will be defined not by what you accomplish. You will be defined by what it takes to discourage you and make you give up. So the good news for anybody who's listening to this is you've got a company like mine, PK Solutions Group. Go to pksolutionsgroup.com and reach out for that help you need in your business world. And you know what? We're going to find that we can look back in life at times when you've been prepared for that business situation you're faced with. And we're going to translate that into your secret weapon. We're going to make you more powerful. So decide this. You won't be defined by discouragement. You will persevere, and you better will be yours. I'll talk to you next time.